Hello and welcome to this training session on AniMark's Conformance System. This video was designed to explain what the AniMark Conformance System is and how it works to underpin the Livestock Global Assurance Program, or LGAP. Before we get started, let's look at what this video will cover. Firstly, we'll take a look at what the AniMark Conformance System is, then who uses it and how it's used for LGAP. We'll spend a bit of time exploring the functions of the system, including a live demonstration in the system as we go through. In the last section, I'll show you all about the supply chain monitor, how it works, and who can use it. There are also short how-to videos and quick reference guides or user manuals that will be provided to you once you apply for certification. These resources are free and set out how to use the system in case you need assistance at any point in time. The AniMark team is also available to help you through any issues and provide IT support where required. So to get started, let's explain what the AniMark Conformance System is. The AniMark Conformance System is an IT system and it supports the operation of LGAP. When someone joins LGAP and pays an application fee, access to the system is granted. Using the system allows LGAP operators and facilities to enter data directly during internal audits, view external audit and conformity history, download audit reports and your LGAP Certificate of Conformity, have line access to the audit resources, nonconformities and risk ratings, and for exporters and importers, the system also allows visibility of the audit reports, nonconformities, and general risk ratings of downstream supply chain partners. The system can be accessed using a computer, tablet, or phone, so you can monitor your audit performance while on the go. A question you might be asking is how the AniMark Conformance System underpins LGAP. So the system underpins the certification pathway. So once you make an application for certification, the remainder of the certification pathway then occurs in the system. That is, your internal audits, external audits, nonconformity management, and certification activities are all completed in the system by each relevant user. System users include exporters and importers, feedlots, abattoirs, farms, AniMark, approved certification bodies, and approved auditors. Each participant will see and have access to data that is relevant to their role within LGAP. For example, approved auditors conduct audits and approved certification bodies perform certification activities such as issuing certificates and making decisions using the system. So everything happens in one centralized place. The system is interconnected, which allows access to data and reporting to occur in real time. Real time means that the minute a certification body issues your LGAP certificate or an auditor issues a nonconformity, it's available in the system for operators and facilities to see and action. The real-time function of the system enables automatic email notifications to occur as well at critical points within the certification pathway. For example, when you have an internal audit due or an audit report is issued to you, you'll receive an email letting you know it's in the system waiting for you. Operators, that is exporters and importers, are given access to the Auditee portal. This portal provides you with access to certification data, including your current risk rating. It also allows the completion of internal audits. It lets you see where external audits are up to and access any audit reports in the system. It allows submission of corrective actions in response to nonconformities issued and access to your LGAP certificate. Operators also get the use of the supply chain monitor, which we'll talk about later on in the session. The system is also being built with a number of automatic email notifications, which let you know when action is required or something has been issued or closed in relation to your LGAP certification. We'll go through each of these functions in more detail in just a moment, But first, I'll explain what the other users of the system see and get access to. So facilities, that is feedlots, farms and abattoirs, also get a login and can see the auditee portal. I have access to everything operators do except for the supply chain monitor. So facilities don't have access to the supply chain monitor, as this function is just for exporters and importers to help them monitor the conformity of the facilities they use. Approved auditors are also given access to the system, to what is called the auditor portal. This gives auditors access to conduct the LGAP external audits and see certification data relevant to the audits that they are assigned. Auditors are able to see internal audit results and the conformity history of operators or facilities they are going to audit. Auditors use the system to complete the LGAP audit checklist and issue audit reports, as well as issue, close, and escalate nonconformities. Auditors also receive automatic email notifications to notify them when you submit corrective actions to them for review. And auditors also have access to an offline function called the mobile app, which allows them to conduct the audit on site without the internet if they need. Lastly, approved certification bodies are also given access to the system, which enables them to see all the certification and audit data for the entities assigned to them, allocate LGAP audits to approved auditors, monitor audit completion, including where internal audits are up to, monitor nonconformities and escalate them as well, complete certification reviews and make decisions on LGAP certification, and lastly, issue LGAP certificates. AniMark also gets oversight over all of this information in the system to make sure it's all running smoothly. So as you can see, the system is interconnected to ensure that audit and certification information is available to everyone who needs it when they need it. Another question you might be asking is who in your company will get access to this system and when do you get your access? Well, the first step is applying for LGAP certification. A link and login credentials will be emailed to your nominated representative when the application is accepted. Once you have the details, you can then log in to access the system using a computer, smartphone, or a tablet, so long as you have the internet. Whoever is responsible for LGAP certification should have access to the system, so access to this login, as well as anyone who will be completing the internal audits for your company. Now we've covered off the users of the system, I'm going to talk about each of the functions in detail with a demonstration of that system function. So to recap, we're going to have a look at how you can see your certification data and risk rating, complete internal audits, check on external audit status and access audit reports, submit corrective actions in response to nonconformities that might be issued to you, access your LGAP certificate, and for operators, we'll go through the supply chain monitor as well. The first thing I'll show you is how to see the overview of your certification data. So when you log into the AniMark Conformance System, the first page you will see is the dashboard. The dashboard pulls all the important things about your certification into one place so you can quickly see and access it. From the dashboard, you can review your current certification status and risk rating. You can see and complete your internal audits, get an overview of where external audits are up to, see any corrective actions required, and also access your LGAP certificate. You can access some information directly from the dashboard, or you can use the navigation bar at the top of the screen to find more information. So I'm just going to switch over to the system now and show you what the dashboard looks like. We'll have to log in first, but that's fine. Welcome to the dashboard. As I pointed out, this is the first page you see when you log into the system. The dashboard pulls all the important information from the system and displays it here for you in a central location. On the page, we see little boxes with information in them. Each box has something different in it, and I'm going to show you what each of these are. Firstly, we have the certification overview box. This gives you an information around your certification status, classifications or scope of certification, and what livestock you handle, as well as your current risk rating. The box to the left is all about internal audits, and it lets you see what internal audits are sitting in the system and what their due date is. Down below that, we have the audit overview box, which gives you information around audits in the system that have been either completed or are underway. To the right, we then have corrective actions, which is where you'll see any non-conformities that you need to correct from internal or external audits. And finally, down the bottom, we have the certificates box, which lets you access your LGAP certificate once it's been issued. All you have to do is hit the little download button here, and it will open up and download a PDF version for you. Navigating the dashboard is quite easy. As you can see, the blue menu bar at the top is just different tabs of information. So on the dashboard page now, you click on master data, you get access to information about your company. So company name, address, and contact details. You click on this little button called geocode, it will give you a Google map of your address as well. Moving along, we can go to contact persons, and that will give you the list of all the people you've listed in your application. So your authorised representative, internal auditor, a billing or invoicing contact, and a site representative. The audit orders page is basically the information that's displayed on your dashboard, but in a tabular format rather than the visual. The livestock tab is just a repeat of information, and it just tells you what livestock you have on your certification. Internal audits we'll go through in just a little bit, and findings is where the corrective actions and non-conformities are. Certificates is the same thing as before. It's just the same information from your dashboard or where you can download your certificate. Supply chain is the supply chain monitor, which we'll talk about later on. And the files is where all the files relating to your certification will be stored. So each line represents an individual file, and you can download that by clicking on the download button to the left. So that was the dashboard and generally navigating the AniMark Conformance System. So the first thing I want to talk about now is internal audits, as they're likely to be the first thing you complete in the system once you gain access. The key things to remember about internal audits are that they're completed by your trained internal auditor. There's an audit checklist provided to you that needs to be completed. The checklist can be started and saved, and you can come back and finish it off later on. That means that there's no need to do it all at once, or you can complete it in the field and come back and enter the data in when you're ready. Alternatively, if you have the internet connection, you can use a tablet or a mobile to complete the checklist while you're on the go. The internal audit checklist is specific to your scope of certification. That is, if you're an exporter, you'll only get questions about being an exporter. If you're a feedlot, you'll only get questions about being a feedlot. Your risk rating will also set how often you need to complete your internal audits. So if you're low risk, you complete internal audits once every 6 months. If you're medium risk, once every 3 months, and high risk, once every month. Before your first external audit can occur after you apply, you must have completed your first internal audit. So that is why your internal auditor needs the login details. The internal auditor can record the details of any non-conformities they find during internal audits directly into the checklist, and they're all managed internally via the system. The corrective actions can also be input into the checklist as you find them, or they can be closed out later. So non-conformities and corrective actions as part of internal audits don't need to be closed by approved auditors. That's because they're internal to your management system and they form part of your continual improvement process. So as I mentioned, there's an internal audit checklist which has to be completed for each internal audit. The internal audit checklist allows the internal auditor to answer yes or no to the question, depending or not if the requirement or the question's been met. It also allows them to input details of evidence and comments for each question. If no is selected, the nonconformity entry box opens up additional fields to allow you to input the details of the nonconformity. You can also input the details of correction or corrective action if you know what it is at that point in time. Files or evidence, such as photos, copies of documents, or procedures even, can be added via the paperclip button, and basically they're stored as an attachment to that question. Information from the guidance on conforming with the LGAP standards is also provided in the internal audit checklist by clicking on the memo button. Just helps you make sure that you're answering the question properly and gives you a little bit of guidance on the go. I'm going to switch back now and show you about how to do internal audits in the system. So there's two ways to access internal audits. The first I'll show you is via the dashboard. So when you hover your mouse over the internal audit, it turns a grey colour. If you click directly onto it, it will open up the internal audit from the dashboard. So this is the internal audit checklist here. To close, we always just have to click on the X and it will take us back to the dashboard. The other way to access internal audits is by clicking on the Internal Audits tab. It will open up the main screen first, which gives you a number of options. So here is the internal audit that was sitting on our dashboard. We can click on that to edit it and open up the checklist like we just had. There's a filter option on the left-hand side as well. Open internal audits will be ones that you've started or ones that you haven't started. And submitted internal audits are all the internal audits that you've already completed. So to complete an internal audit, all you have to do is click onto it to open up the checklist. Next, you'll have a number of questions which you can expand and collapse on the left-hand side. The questions need to be answered yes or no, and you can add comments as you go through. So I'll give you a little bit of an overview. Autosave means that the questions and what you input into the comments box will be saved as you go along. Leave it on so you don't lose any data. You can increase the size of the font on the screen if you want to make it bigger or decrease it. Refresh just refreshes the page. So as you're going through your internal audit, all you have to do is answer yes or no based on the question. So say this one is conforming, you can click into here and add in a comment. You can also see the guidance by clicking on the little memo box. It tells you the LGAP requirement and basically some guidance on what you should be looking for or checking on. If you want more space for the comments box, you can click on the little arrows and it will open up a larger text box. If you wanted to issue a nonconformity or you found a nonconformity as part of your internal audit, all you have to do is click no, and it generates the nonconformity entry. So here we can hit no to activate the fields, and we can type into here details of why it's a nonconformity. Here we go. If you know what was happening at the time and you have a corrected and you've already taken corrective action, you can add the comments around what was taken into here as well. Otherwise, you can leave it blank and it will generate a nonconformity for you that you can close afterwards. You can also attach files directly by clicking on the little paperclip button. It'll open up a file upload button. So we need to click this one with a little paperclip, a little paper icon with a plus sign. We add the files. We can drag files or click to add, open up your File Explorer. I will upload the file and then you can save and close, which will save that file to that checklist question. Next, you just have to go through and answer all of the questions. I'm just going to hit yes for the sake of time. But ideally what you'd be doing is answering yes or no based on the internal audit results, adding comments, uploading files as we go through. So once all of the questions have an answer to them, like so, we can then hit the Save and Validate button. What that does is just checks to make sure we've answered all of the questions, and you'll get a little green bar at the top. Because we've already validated it through this button, we don't need to click onto the validation step next. You can do that as well, although it's already done, so you don't need to do it again. You go to the end of the internal audit. There's some comments you want to make about it. You can pop them in there. If not, confirm that everything's answered to the best of your ability and click the Submit button. And then hit OK. And what that does is it will push it back into the system to say you've completed it. And it will now appear in the Submitted Internal Audits. Here we go, this one at the top. So you can click on that again to review it as well. There's no problems with that. Another way that you can use the internal audit function is to actually request changes to your certification. So what I mean by this is you could request to change who your internal auditor is, update your contact details, request a new species of livestock you want to get certified, as an example. So to do that, all you have to do is hit this New button, and it will ask you what type of request you want to make. So there's two in the system. There's Renew Certification, which you need to do after 3 years, but we'll remind you when that happens, so no big deal. And the Request to Change Certification. So if you click onto this one and hit Save and Close, it will generate a new checklist that basically lets you request a change to your certification. So the same process applies. You just want to click into here, and it gives us a number of questions to say, well, what is it that you want to change? So on the left-hand side, you can see there's a number of areas. So update contact details, you can request voluntary suspension, you can request a withdrawal from the program, report an incident, add a new export market. So you say you want to, if you're an exporter and you want to export to a new country, or you want to start exporting buffalo where you were only exporting cattle before, you can do that here. To do so, all you have to do is click the whether or not the question is applicable to you. And if it is, you can click the yes. If it's a change to contact details, you can pop in the contact details that you need changed, and we can do it from there. The same process applies. Hit validate, make sure all the questions have an NA next to them. If you don't want that change, go to the end and submit. It won't let you submit until all the questions are answered. So if we did the validation, all these ones need to be answered so that we can submit the checklist. Okay, so that's how to complete internal audits in the system. And the next thing that I want to talk about is audit reports, because the thing that happens after an internal audit is your external audit. So you won't see the audit checklist, but you will see a copy of the audit report, and the audit report contains all the information from the audit. So after each external audit is completed, the auditor will make an audit report available to you in the system. The audit report will also contain a list of non-conformities that were found at the audit, and then they can reissue the audit report once they're all been closed out. You'll get an automatic email notification sent to you to let you know when the audit report's available or the audit's been finished, and the report can be found under the Files section of the system. So I'm going to switch over and show you what that looks like and how to access it using the Files section. Okay. So once we're back into the system, we can click on the Files tab to navigate into the Files. So this is where all the documents get saved. They're saved in chronological order, so they'll be in here for the top as the default will be the newest document in the system. You can sort based on subject date. If you click on the top row where the column title is, you can actually sort based on date. It will just reverse the order. Similarly, if you wanted to find a certain file type, you can search in these little boxes and it will bring up all the audit reports. You have multiple certificates, it will actually bring up all of those. So certain ways to filter through information. So audit reports will have a file type audit report, and then you want to look for the relevant one with the relevant date. So here we can see that this is the audit report here that we want to have a look at. So what we want to do is then download that by clicking on this little download button. And so that will download the PDF version of the audit report for you. If you then click onto it, it will open up the audit report for you. It will go through the details, the audit details, the risk rating, and all the results of the audit. At the end of the audit report, you'll also see if there's any non-conformities open. And as soon as they're closed out, you can get a new audit report issued without the non-conformities. Similarly, you can access your LGAP certificate using the same methodology. All you need to do is find the ones that say certificate as an example, and then you can download it here. The same function from the dashboard, it's just a different way to access your information. So you can click onto it, open it up, and get your LGAP certificate from the files section as well. So the next thing we're going to talk about is corrective actions and nonconformity management in the AniMark Conformance System. So during the external audit, you may be issued with nonconformities. Now these are required for you to submit corrective actions in order to close them out and either maintain your certification or gain certification. So the process of nonconformities and submitting corrective actions is all contained in the system. So when an auditor issues your nonconformity to you, it will appear on your dashboard, which I showed you just before. It shows as a corrective action. So the next step for you is to submit a corrective action response back to the auditor using the system. So once that happens, the auditor will get an email saying that you've submitted a corrective action, and they'll log in to review that. The auditor can then review, and if they need some more information, they can send it back to you, or if they're happy with what you've implemented as part of the corrective action, they can then close that nonconformity in their system and will disappear from your portal on your dashboard, and it will also let you know via email. So I'm going to switch back to the system now to show you how the nonconformity management process works. So again, there's two ways to access nonconformities or findings, audit findings as they're termed. So we have the dashboard, which gives you a list of all of the nonconformities in the system that are open on your certification. Alternatively, you can access them by going to the Findings Workflow tab at the top, which will just put them in a bigger list view for you to have a look at. So a few things to note on this page. The finding relates to the nonconformity detail, or what the auditors input as the nonconformity. The due on date is pretty self-explanatory. The workflow step is where it's up to. So as you can see, we've got internal audit nonconformities here, and we have different external audit nonconformities. This little icon here means that there's a comment on that nonconformity or a little message. I'll show you what that means in just a bit. And then this one here is about what standard it was raised against, or what type of nonconformity. So these ones are internal nonconformities, and these ones were for 1003 as an example. It also gives you the checklist question or the requirement that was raised against and where it's up to. So these are all corrective actions requested. The level of the nonconformity, so you can see these ones have a major or a minor, and then some corrective actions. So to have a look at a nonconformity or a corrective action, we just simply need to click onto it, and it will open up the entry on its own screen. So there's a lot of information on this screen, and you can collapse all that information if you don't need to see it. So the first one is audit, just gives an overview of the type of audit it was. The finding is the finding detail. So it's a major nonconformity, And this is the nonconformity that the audit has issued to you around why it's a nonconformity. The deadline details is next, so 7 days is how a major nonconformity is required and that it's due on the 19th of the 11th. The corrective action box is the section where operators and facilities need to input the details of what correction and corrective action they have taken in relation to that nonconformity. So you can type into here, you can copy and paste if you've got it somewhere else, and basically you can type in your comments and upload files in the same manner you did in the internal audit checklist directly into the nonconformity and corrective action to be able to close it out. So once you've submitted evidence or you've uploaded evidence and input details of the corrective action, you can scroll to the top and see where it says submit finding, make sure it says that, and then all you have to do is hit execute. And that will push the corrective action back to the auditor for them to have a look at, review it, and then if they're happy with it, they can close it out. So to do that again, we'll open up this one here. We have the same thing. We have the major nonconformity, details of the nonconformity, the deadline, the due on date, and the corrective action. This is in here where we can input the corrective action details of what you've taken, the evidence, upload training, upload photos, whatever it is, into the nonconformity. You can save it for later if you want, or you can hit submit finding and execute to close it out. Some other functions of this is you can actually have a look at the files. So this could contain evidence of the auditor's input as part of the nonconformity, or it could contain information that you've uploaded as part of your response. The communication tab is also a good one. So when I said there was a little icon there that said there was a little email message, just means that the auditors maybe asked a question or reminded you about something. So in here you can also ask them questions as well. So with understanding something or just giving them a general communication, hit the little send and it will send them a message to say what it was that's done. You can mark it as read when you've read it. So we can go back to the finding, hit submit finding and execute, which will then push that over to the auditor for them to have a look at and review. So that's all about nonconformities. The other ones are here. So an internal audit nonconformity, it's the same information as the external ones. Once you submit it, it's all done though, and you can just input the corrective action as your corrective action, upload files if you want. And as soon as you hit execute, it basically closes it off in the system. Go. That's how to close corrective actions in the system and manage nonconformities from an operator or facilities point of view. And once all the nonconformities are closed, the certification body has the ability to finish or finalise their certification review and make a certification decision. If the decision is made to certify an operator or facility, then they issue what's called an LGAP Certificate of Conformity. And so I showed you how to access that before through the files, and it's also on the dashboard. So I won't go back in and show you how to do that again. But important things to know about your LGAP certificate for information. So certificates are issued for 3 years and they'll have a 3-year validity on them. They're available electronically for use, and the version in the system is the current one. So each certificate will have its own unique QR code, which you can scan to verify that certificate is actually valid. This feature actually allows anyone who sees that certificate to scan it and check that it's valid. So it takes them to a verification portion of the AniMark website. I also showed you earlier how to access your certificate, so I won't go through that again. But we do have the email notifications to let you know that when your certificate has been issued. That brings us to a close in the general functions of the AniMark Conformance System. And what we'll do now is we'll run through the feature called the Supply Chain Monitor. And this section applies mostly to exporters and importers, or operators as they're termed under the Livestock Global Assurance Program. And it's used to monitor or help monitor the status of downstream supply chain partners. So the supply chain monitor lets operators build their supply chains in the system. Having supply chains built enables real-time monitoring of facilities in those supply chains. Automatic email notifications are built into the system and lets operators know if there's changes in the certification status, if there's non-conformities issued, or the risk rating changes. So if the supply chain isn't built in the system, you won't get those notifications sent to you, so you won't have access to the real-time reporting and oversight of supply chain partners. So I'm going to demonstrate how to build supply chains in the system in just a minute. But first, it's important to know that you can't just add anyone that's certified under LGAP into your supply chain. You actually need their permission to do so because you're viewing their data. You firstly will need to gain their permission and get their unique alphanumeric code to be able to add them into the supply chain. So once you have the permission and the code, you can add them into the supply chain to see their audit reports, their risk rating, and their LGAP certificate. So once you have all your codes, you're able to build what's called the supply chain list, and then that list gets converted into the graph that you see on screen. So you can build supply chains any way you like to see them that makes sense to you and your business. So for example, if you're an importer, you might build supply chains based on suppliers that supply livestock to you, or you might just build everyone that you send livestock through. Exporters might build them per SCAS or per importer, depends really how they want to see them. So I'm going to switch back to the system now to show you how that works and how to build supply chains in the system. So the supply chain monitor is accessed by operators only, by clicking on the supply chain tab along the top. The first page you'll see is the dashboard. So the dashboard is the dashboard of the supply chain monitor. It lets you see different supply chain statuses with this little graph. Red indicates that someone's suspended or withdrawn, and green indicates that they're certified. If it was grey, it means they're not yet certified. So you can see there's some differences depending on what supply chain we're looking at. This box here gives you an indication of which individual facility in your supply chains are either suspended or withdrawn. You can see that at a glance. The first thing I'll show you is the supply chain graph of one that I've already built in the system. So the supply chain graph page, you can toggle between supply chains at the top. So if you create more than one, you just need to make sure that you select the new one and hit search to bring up that supply chain on the screen. So as we can see, this one is, I'm logged in as the test exporter here. So this is me, and this is my company information on the right-hand side. If I click onto my test, let's just say it's an abattoir, so it's just a made-up supply chain. We see that it's now highlighted with that orange color, and it's got a green tick indicating it's certified. We'll get their company information here, and we can actually access their audit reports and things by clicking on this little person button here on the company info. That brings up the supply chain partner or supply chain links details. So we get their risk rating, we get their certification status, what they are, and what type of certification they hold. We have access to their contact persons. You can access their LGAP certificate if they've been issued one. Again, this is all just test profiles, so it's not all completed. If they have any non-conformities in the system that are open, you'll be able to see them here on the findings tab. And the next tab over is the audit reports, is where you can access their audit reports to have a look at what's going on. You can do that for each entity in your supply chain. Simply click on the little company information box to find out what's going on with them. So we can see this one here is a feedlot, and they're suspended. So you can grab their certification information from this view. To get a graph and to build a graph, we first needed what's called a supply chain list. So I'm going to go to the supply chain list tab now. So this will show you all the supply chains that you have built in the system. So for example, there's 2 in here at the moment. So if I just click on this one here, so test supply chain 1, it will open up the supply chain list that's been built in relation to how those animals move through that supply chain. So as we can see, it's in stages. This one's relatively simple and straightforward, which I know not all of them will be. But stage 1 is basically the first node or entity that livestock go to after they leave your remit. So as an example, this could be, if you're an exporter, it could be an importer. If you're an importer, this could be a feedlot. So this one here is your level 1. It gives you some details. You can actually move the columns over and search and do things as well. Filter it if you need. It gives you a status, so certified or suspended. You can access company details here as well by clicking on the person. You can, the add button will add the next link in the chain underneath them. Risk rating will give you an overview of that, number of findings that they've ever been issued, a number of open ones, and then the type of facility that they are. So you can see stage 2 is under stage 1. So that could be if you're an exporter, an importer, and then a feedlot, and then an abattoir. You can add multiple to each stages. So if I was to keep adding on, you can add them on. So you've got chains and links and livestock going to multiple facilities from one feedlot as an example. So that's how it all works together to build our supply chain. So let's build a new one to show you how to do that. What we want to do is just go back to the main page of the supply chain list and hit the new button. So this we need to give, it will have cattle. If you have multiple types of livestock, you need to select it per livestock and create it per livestock species. You can create a name. Let's do test supply chain 2. If you want to put a description in, you can to help you identify it, up to you. I'm not going to pop one in. So next we just hit save and close. Make sure that you leave all of these details as they are. If you want to change the name here, you can do that as well. And we just need to hit save and close again to take us back to that list screen for that supply chain. So this is where we need to start adding in our supply chain partners, starting with our first person that we're going to be sending livestock to. So we do that by adding the first stage, as in the +9 here. And then what we need to do is search for that company. So this is important because you need that alphanumeric code to be able to do this, to enable you to actually access their information. So I'm just going to use the test ones that we had before. So you type in their number and you can hit enter or search and it will bring up a result down the bottom. So we can just hit add onto here. If you were going to add on multiple importers or multiple feedlots at once, you can do that as well. So you can actually create, just do this for you so you can see. In search and add them on, so they'll both be level 2 or the first links in our chain, so we'll actually have 2. So then we can hit finish and we've got 2 stage 1s. Now to add stage 2s or the next link in the chain from that supply chain, we need to add someone to their level. So for example, if this was an importer, we could say, okay, now I want to look at that first importer and where I'm sending where livestock go from that importer. So to do that, we need to click on the add sign on that importer or that first stage 1 client, and then we need to start searching for our feedlots as an example, or our farms. So again, it's just information. These would ideally be different facilities, but we can add them on. So we can add. And then we'll just do the other one as well to show you how that looks. Search, and then we can add them in, and then we can hit finish. So now we have 2 feedlots under, say, our importer, and then to add, say, abattoirs onto each of these, we could then add an abattoir onto this feedlot and finish, and we'll have a stage 3. So if we just have a look at what we've created so far in the system as a graph. So if we hit save and close, or save that to supply chain 2 in there, you can go over to supply chain graph and have a look at our graph and how that looks. So I'm just going to scroll down a little bit. There we go. So now we're going to go to supply chain 2 because that's our new supply chain that we've just built. And there we go, we have our supply chain. So this is me, the exporter. I import 2 importers as an example, and then that importer sent to 2 feedlots, and then this feedlot sent to this abattoir. And then you can continue to build it as per your supply chain. That explains the supply chain monitor functionality of the system, which brings us to a close of our session. So now we've had a look at everything in the system. I just wanted to remind you again that we do have those short how-to videos. They're roughly between 1 to 5 minutes long, depending on how complicated the topic is. We also have quick reference guides or a user manual for you to make sure that you know how to use all the functions as well. Alternatively, if you wanted to get in touch with AniMark, we're always happy to help you through any IT issues or support with the system as you need. The system is really easy to use and get the hang of, but the resources are available and free to use once you apply for certification. The key takeaways of today's session, I'll just do a recap for you, is that all participants get access to the AniMark Conformance System, and that allows each user a login and to see, access and use information that's relevant to their role. Exporters and importers or operators under LGAP get access to the supply chain monitor, which we just ran through, and that allows conformity oversight over supply chain partners. Everything occurs in real time, so as soon as you close a nonconformity or submit a corrective action, that auditor gets an email. You get access to the system when you apply for LGAP certification, and we do have those free resources and guides available for you to help in case you can't remember what you saw in this video. So that draws us to a close for today's session on the AniMark's Conformance System. If you do have any questions or would like additional information or resources, please don't hesitate to get in contact with AniMark. We're more than happy to help you along the way. Thank you.